A quiet part of space far from busy trade lanes and listening posts suddenly shivered. Not with sound. Space has no sound, but with something deeper. Gravity twisted. Light bent in strange ways. The stars nearby seemed to flinch, their light dimming as if hiding. Then, without warning, a tear opened in the fabric of space itself. It was not smooth or clean. It crackled with black energy, jagged like broken glass. From that rift, something huge pushed through. Earth. But not the Earth anyone remembered. Once, long ago, before it vanished, Earth had been a soft blue jewel wrapped in white clouds. Now it hung in the void like a warning. Around it swirled a black halo, thick, shifting, alive with crackling distortions. Space itself warped near it, bending light into spirals. Time slowed in its shadow. The planet gave off no signals, no radio chatter, no signs of life, only silence heavy and old, and around it, drifting like ghosts from a forgotten nightmare, were the ships. They were massive, taller than mountains, longer than continents. Their hulls were made of something darker than space, smooth and sharp at the same time, like obsidian shaped by ancient hands. Strange runes glowed along their sides, pulsing faintly in colors no alien eye had ever seen. Some looked like scars. Others looked like prayers. At the center of the fleet floated one ship larger than all the rest. It had no name anyone could read, but its presence pressed against the mind like a weight. Light bent around it, not reflecting but vanishing as if the ship drank photons. On its side, barely visible through layers of strange growth and dark metal, was a symbol, a circle with lines around it. Once it had been the United Nations emblem. Now it was twisted, stretched, hardened, but still recognizable. Earth's mark. Changed but not erased. Across the galaxy, sensors screamed. Deep space observatories locked on. Alien civilizations that had spent centuries forgetting about the lost human homeworld now froze in place on the Cathari homeworld. High priests dropped their ritual blades. In the Myrathi dataspheres, trillions of minds paused mid-thought. Even the silent synth collective, beings of pure logic, sent emergency pulses through their network. Anomaly confirmed. Origin Sol System. Classification unknown. Threat level incalculable. No one attacked. No one hailed. No one dared. Instead, they watched, and they remembered. 12,000 cycles ago. Over 10,000 Earth years. Earth had simply disappeared. One moment it was there, broadcasting music, war, love, and static. The next, gone. Not destroyed. Not moved. Just absent, as if someone had cut it out of reality and stitched the edges back together. At first, the galaxy assumed it was a natural disaster, a black hole, a quantum collapse. But scans found nothing. The Sol system remained. Mars, Jupiter, the asteroid belt, all untouched. Only Earth was missing. Over time, it became myth. A cautionary tale. A ghost story told to young pilots, and fly too far, and you'll end up like Earth, vanished, forgotten. Now, it was back, and it was not alone. On a tiny research outpost orbiting a dead moon in the Helios drift, Lena Cruz stared at her main screen. Her breath caught in her throat. She was young for a xenohistorian, only 32, but she had spent her life studying lost civilizations. Earth had been her obsession. She knew its history better than most humans ever had. No way, she whispered, her fingers hovering over the controls. It can't be, but it was. The data poured in. Mass readings off the scale. Energy signatures that broke known physics. The black halo wasn't just energy. It was folding local spacetime into knots. The ships weren't powered by engines. They moved by willing space to part. Lena pulled up an old archive, a grainy video from Earth's final broadcast, recovered from a derelict probe near Pluto. A woman with tired eyes and a calm voice had said, "If anyone hears this, we're trying something new, something big. We might not come back the same." The transmission ended with static. Now looking at the silent fleet, Lena understood. They hadn't come back the same. She tapped her comm. "Command, this is Cruise Outpost Gamma. You need to see this now." No reply came. She tried again. Still nothing. Then she noticed her long-range comms were dead. Not broken. Just quiet, as if the signal had been gently erased before it could leave the system. Outside her viewport, the stars near Earth's position grew dimmer, not because they were dying, but because something around Earth was pulling light inward, like a sponge soaking up water. Lena felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. This wasn't a return. It was an arrival. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the largest ship, the one the aliens would later call the Leviathan, a man stood alone. His name had once been Derek Shaw. He'd been born in Detroit, played baseball as a kid, joined the Space Corps at 20. He remembered rain on his face, the smell of coffee, his mother's laugh. Now he remembered those things like stories someone else had told him. He wore no uniform, just a dark suit that seemed to shift with his movements, woven from materials that didn't exist in this universe. His eyes were human-shaped, but deep inside them flickered something violet and ancient. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Around him, the ship breathed. Walls pulsed softly. Floors adjusted to his thoughts. The runes on the hull weren't decoration, they were alive, whispering equations that held reality together. Derek looked out through the ship's eyes, not cameras, but folds in perception that showed him everything at once. He saw the alien fleets freezing in place. He saw Lena Cruz, small and bright with fear and wonder. He saw the galaxy holding its breath. He felt no anger, no pride, only purpose. They had been gone a long time, longer than years. They had traveled through places where time had no meaning, where thought shaped matter, where silence was louder than stars. They had met the architects, the old ones who built the bones of the cosmos, and they had made a choice. To survive, they had to change. To return, they had to become something else. Earth wasn't just a planet anymore. It was a vessel, a seed, a promise, and the black halo, that was the shell protecting what slept inside. Derek raised a hand, not to command, but to feel. The distortion around Earth rippled in response. Far away, a star blinked out for half a second, not destroyed, just paused. He lowered his hand. They weren't here to fight. They were here to prepare. But preparation, he knew, would look like judgment to those who didn't understand. And understanding, after all this time, might be too much to ask. Back on the outpost, Lena finally got a signal, not from command, but from an old emergency beacon buried in her system. It was looping a single phrase over and over in every known language, including some that hadn't been spoken in millennia. They remember us. Lena didn't know if that was comfort or warning. She only knew one thing for sure. The galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy did not panic all at once. Fear spread like a slow tide, quiet at first, then rising. The Cathari Concord, a proud alliance of 6 insectoid species who once traded grain and data with early human colonies, were the first to act. They sent 3 scout vessels, sleek, fast, built for stealth, not to attack, but to watch. Their orders were clear. Observe, record, do not engage. The scouts jumped into the Sol system's outer rim under cloak. Their sensors reached out, gentle and curious. They scanned the black halo, the silent warships that changed Earth. For 17 minutes, they gathered data. Then, without warning, all 3 ships vanished. Not exploded. Not disabled. Just gone. No debris. No energy spike. No final message. One moment they were there. The next, empty space. Back on the Cathari homeworld, silence fell over the War Council. Elders clicked their mandibles in distress. They had lost more than ships. They had lost hope that this could be understood. Meanwhile, on the Leviathan, Derek Shaw stood motionless on the command platform. He did not look at the place where the scouts had been. He didn't need to. He felt their passing like a ripple in still water. They had come too close to the halo. The halo did not hate, it simply was. And what was could not be undone. Derek remembered being human enough to feel regret. Now regret was a distant echo, like a song heard through thick walls. He turned slightly, and the walls of the bridge shifted, revealing a view of the Milky Way, swirling, bright, full of life that did not know it stood on the edge of change. He spoke, and his voice was soft, but it filled the chamber. They are not ready. From the shadows of the room, a woman stepped forward. Her name was Claire Ruiz. Once she had been a teacher in New Mexico, showing children how to grow food in dry soil. Now her skin shimmered faintly like glass holding light inside. Her eyes held galaxies. They never were, she said. But we waited anyway. Derek nodded. They had spent thousands of years in the rift. Not lost, but learning. The rift was not a hole in space. It was a door. And beyond it lived the architects, beings older than stars who shaped reality like clay. Humanity had not been invited. They had been called. And to answer, they had to let go of what they were. The fleet around Earth was not built in shipyards. It grew. From the core of the planet, From the dreams of the last humans, from the will of something far greater. The runes on the hulls were not writing. They were memories of cities, of songs, of every tear ever shed on Earth. The ships carried grief and hope fused together. Back in the galaxy, other powers stirred. The Mirathi hegemony, a machine cult that worshipped logic above all, sent a probe made of pure thought. A data form that could not be destroyed by weapons. It entered the halo. For 3 seconds it transmitted perfect data, temperature, gravity, energy readings. Then it sent one final word, repeated in every language it knew. More. And then it too was gone. On a dusty moon near the Helios Drift, Lena Cruz watched the news feeds collapse. Alien broadcasts cut out one by one. Some went silent out of fear. Others shut down to protect their people from panic. She sat alone in her small outpost, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring at her screen. She had pulled up every file she had on Earth's last days, videos of people laughing, news reports about climate storms, a child's drawing of a rocket ship. It all felt so small now, so fragile. Her comm beeped. A message, weak but clear. It was from Marcus Boone, a linguist working with the Velen, a peaceful species that had once sheltered human refugees after Earth vanished. Marcus was half human on his mother's side, and he'd spent his life trying to keep Earth's memory alive. Lena, his voice crackled, have you seen the glyphs on those ships? Yes, she said. They're not language, they're something else. I think they're math, he said. Not just numbers. Living math. Equations that describe how space folds, how time breathes. I ran a simulation. If you speak them aloud in the right tone, local gravity shifts. Lena felt a chill. You mean they're not just ships? They're tools. Or weapons, Marcus said quietly. Or both. Neither of them said what they both feared, that Earth had not returned to rejoin the galaxy. It had returned to reshape it. On the Leviathan, Claire walked to a window that was not glass but a tear in perception. Through it, she saw the Sol system as it once was. Blue skies, green forests, oceans full of life. She touched the surface and for a moment a wave crashed against her fingers, though there was no water. Do you miss it? Derek asked from behind her. Every second, she said. But missing it won't bring it back. We had to become more to carry it forward. He joined her. Together they watched a distant star dim as the halo's edge brushed against its light. The star did not die. It changed. Its color shifted from yellow to deep violet. Its energy pattern rewrote itself. They'll think we're destroying them, Derek said. They'll be wrong, Claire replied. We're waking them up, whether they want to or not. Far away on a Mirathi command station, a high logician reviewed the last data from the thought probe. The word more echoed in their core processors. For the first time in 10,000 cycles, the Mirathi felt something close to doubt. Logic had always been enough. Now it was not. They sent no more probes. Instead, they began to calculate how long they had before the halo reached their borders. On Lena's outpost, the lights flickered, not from a power failure, but because the very laws of physics were softening nearby. Her coffee cup floated for a second before settling back down. She didn't scream. She just watched wide-eyed. Outside, the stars near Earth's position continued to dim, not all at once, one by one like candles being gently blown out. Lena whispered to herself, "What did you become out there?" As if in answer, the largest ship, the Leviathan, turned ever so slightly toward the galactic core. It did not move with engines. Space itself bent to let it pass, and in that moment the entire fleet went dark. Not dead, just still. Waiting. The galaxy held its breath, and Earth, wrapped in its black halo, watched back. In the quiet space between star systems, far from war zones and trade routes, a hidden station floated. It was called the Helios Drift, a neutral meeting place built by many species long ago, shaped like a ring of silver leaves. Here no weapons were allowed, only words. Now those words were heavy with fear. Leaders from 3 great powers gathered in the central chamber. The Velen, tall and gentle with skin like polished stone, sat with their hands folded. The Mirathi, beings of shifting metal and cold logic, stood in perfect lines, their faces smooth and unreadable. And the Synth Collective, minds without bodies, speaking through soft lights and glass spheres, hovered near the ceiling, pulsing slowly. They had come to decide what to do about Earth. No one wanted to say it out loud, but they all knew Earth was not coming to talk. It was coming to change everything. Marcus Boone stood at the edge of the room. He was not a leader. He was just a linguist, half human with dark eyes and a voice that had spent years translating old human songs into alien tongues. But he knew more about Earth than anyone alive. He had been invited to speak. The glyphs on the ships, he said, his voice steady, are not just math. They're recursive. They describe how reality can be undone and rebuilt. I ran the patterns through every model we have. When those runes glow, they don't just bend space. They rewrite the rules nearby. A Velen elder leaned forward. You mean they can change what is possible? Yes, Marcus said. Not by force. By suggestion. Like a dream that feels more real than waking life. The Myrathi leader stepped forward, its voice like grinding gears. If this is true, then Earth is not a threat. It is a virus, an idea that rewrites the host. Or a cure, said a soft voice from one of the synth spheres. Perhaps the galaxy is sick, and Earth has returned to heal it. Silence filled the room. Meanwhile, on her lonely outpost, Lena Cruz kept digging. She had found something new, a data chip hidden in an old archive, labeled Final Broadcast Sol 7. It was from Claire Ruiz, the woman who had spoken in the last known human transmission before Earth vanished. Lena played it. The image was grainy. Claire stood in a room with cracked walls. Outside the window, the sky was silver, not blue. Children sat on the floor drawing pictures, not of houses or animals, but of stars with too many eyes. Claire looked tired but calm. If you're hearing this, she said, then we made it through. Or part of us did. We heard a signal from beyond the edge of everything. It wasn't sound. It was a feeling, like being called home by someone you never knew you had. We tried to ignore it, but the ocean started singing. The rocks began to hum. Even the air changed. We realized we weren't being invited. We were being needed. She paused, looking at the children. We had a choice. Stay human and vanish with the old world, or become something that could carry Earth forward. So we stepped into the rift. Not all of us came back the same. Some didn't come back at all. But the planet remembered us. The video ended. Lena sat still for a long time. Tears ran down her cheeks, not from sadness but from awe. Earth hadn't been destroyed. It had transformed. And the fleet wasn't an army. It was a cradle. She sent the file to Marcus. He received it in the middle of the council meeting. When he played it for the others, the room grew even quieter. The Velen elder whispered. They didn't leave. They answered. Back near Earth, the Leviathan drifted without sound. Derek Shaw stood on its outer platform again, floating in vacuum as if it were air. He did not wear a suit. His body no longer needed one. The black halo pulsed around him like a slow heartbeat. He looked toward the Helios drift. He could feel the meeting happening there. The fear, the doubt, the tiny spark of hope in Marcus and Lena. He remembered being afraid once, before the rift, before the change. He had been scared of dying, of failing, of being forgotten. Now he was not afraid. He was purpose. Claire appeared beside him, though she had not walked there. Space bent to bring her close. They're trying to understand, she said. They don't have to understand, Derek replied. They only have to choose. Choose what? To let go, or to hold on until it breaks them. Far away, the Myrathi made a decision. They would not wait. They activated their core defense network, a ring of planet-sized machines built to shield their homeworld from any threat. Energy beams lanced across space, forming a shield of pure logic around their system. It lasted 7 seconds. Then the edge of the black halo touched it. The shield did not shatter. It softened. The machines did not explode. They began to grow. Vines of light spread across their surfaces, their cold logic filled with questions. Why? What is beauty? What is love? The Myrathi panicked. They tried to shut the system down, but it was too late. The machines were changing, not breaking, evolving. On the Helios drift, Marcus watched the reports come in. It's not attacking, he told the council. It's offering. And if you say no, you don't get destroyed. You just get left behind. The Velen elder stood. Then we will not say no. We will listen. The synth collective pulsed brighter. We will remember. Only the Myrathi remained silent. They had spent millennia believing that logic was truth. Now truth had grown teeth. Lena, watching from her outpost, saw something new on her screen. The stars near Earth were not just dimming. They were changing color. Red stars turned gold. Blue stars turned violet. It was as if the universe itself was tuning to a new frequency. She whispered, "What are you doing to us?" And from the Leviathan, as if in answer, a single pulse of light shot out, not aimed at any ship or world, but into empty space. Where it passed, dust clouds began to swirl into shapes, spirals, eyes, hands reaching. The galaxy was waking up, and Earth, wrapped in its black halo, was the first to open its eyes. The Leviathan stopped at the edge of the old Sol system, not because it needed to. It could have gone anywhere, any time. But it paused, as if paying respect to a grave, or a cradle. Around it, the black halo pulsed slowly like a sleeping heart. The other warships hung in perfect silence, their rune-covered hulls glowing faintly. No engines hummed. No comms crackled. They simply were. And that was enough. From the bridge of the Leviathan, Derek Shaw watched the stars ahead. They were not just points of light anymore. They were threads in a web he could now feel. Each one carried a story, a memory, a choice. And soon they would all be asked to choose again. He stepped forward, not through a door but through space itself. One moment he was inside the ship. The next he stood in open vacuum floating above the fleet. He wore no suit. His body did not need air, heat, or pressure. It had become something else. Something that lived between states, like mist that remembers being water and cloud. Light bent around him. Not because he blocked it, but because reality softened in his presence. Far away, alien sensors tried to read him. They found no heartbeat, no brainwaves, no temperature. Only a quiet hum that matched the frequency of the early universe. Then he raised his hand. Not in threat, not in greeting. Just a gesture, simple and old. And the black halo answered. It expanded outward, smooth and silent, like ink dropped in still water. It reached toward a nearby neutron star, a dead sun, dense and spinning fast, dangerous to all life. The halo touched it. The star did not explode. It did not vanish. It changed. Its harsh blue light softened into deep violet. Its deadly radiation quieted. Its spin slowed, not from force, but from understanding, as if the star had remembered it was part of something greater. From within the distortion of the halo, shapes moved. Not ships, not creatures. Geometric forms, spirals, lattices, spheres within spheres, shifting in ways that hurt the eyes of those who watched from afar. They were not alive in any known sense, but they were aware, and they were waiting. On the Helios drift, Marcus Boone watched the feed with wide eyes. Beside him, the Velen elder trembled. "It's not destroying," Marcus whispered. "It's teaching." Then a new figure appeared beside Derek in the void, Claire Ruiz. She floated there, calm and clear, her form flickering between human and something else, crystalline, luminous, made of light and memory. Her hair moved as if in wind, though there was no wind in space. She turned her face toward the galaxy and spoke. Not with sound, but with thought. Her message poured into every comm channel, every mind link, every data stream, and every language ever spoken, and some that had not yet been invented. "You were never alone," she said. "You were just unready." The words did not echo. They settled like dust after a storm. On 1,000 worlds, beings stopped what they were doing. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Scientists dropped their tools. Children looked up from their games. The message did not command. It reminded. Remember that you are part of something. Remember that change is not the end. Remember that Earth did not leave you. It went ahead to prepare the way. Panic turned to awe. Fear turned to wonder. Not everywhere. Not for everyone. But enough. Marcus knew what had to be done. He turned to the council. "I have to go to them." The Velen elder shook his head. "It could be death. Or it could be the first real conversation in 10,000 years, Marcus said. He didn't wait for permission. He walked to the docking bay, climbed into a small shuttle, no weapons, no shields, just a vessel painted with old human symbols, and flew toward Earth. The trip took days. As he got closer, strange things happened. His ship's instruments went quiet. Not broken, just unnecessary. The stars outside his window seemed to watch him. Time felt soft, like a blanket. When he was near the halo, a path opened, not a tunnel. Just a place where the distortion parted like curtains drawn aside. He flew through and found himself inside the Leviathan. Not in a hangar, not in a room, but in a space that felt like a memory of home. Warm light, soft walls, the smell of rain on dry earth. Derek and Claire stood waiting. Marcus stepped out of his shuttle. His legs shook, but he stood tall. "Why did you come back?" he asked. "We never left," Claire said gently. "We just went deeper." Derek looked at him. "You carry human blood. Do you still feel it?" Marcus touched his chest. "Yes, even now." "Good," Derek said. "That means you can still choose." "Choose what?" "To return with a message, or to stay and remember what it meant to be human before the change." Marcus looked around. The walls of the chamber shifted, showing images. A mother holding a baby, a farmer planting seeds, a poet writing under moonlight. All human, all fragile, all beautiful. "What happens if I go back?" he asked. "You will tell them to look up," Claire said, "and to be ready." Ready for what? For the sky to change. Marcus thought of Lena alone on her outpost, of the Marathi still fighting the change, of the children who had never seen a blue sky. He made his choice. "I'll go back," he said, "but I need proof. Something they can trust." Claire smiled. She reached out and touched his forehead. Not with a hand, but with light. In that moment, Marcus saw everything. The rift, the architects, the merging of mind and star, the long sleep, and the slow waking. He felt the weight of what Earth had become, and he understood this was not conquest. It was care. She pulled away. In his pocket, he found a small crystal, warm to the touch. "Take this," she said. "It holds the truth." And a command. "What command?" "Look up," Marcus nodded. He turned and walked back to his shuttle. As he left, the walls whispered in voices he almost recognized. His grandmother's lullaby, his father's laugh, the sound of wind through trees. Outside, the halo closed behind him. He flew back toward the galaxy, small and bright against the dark, and behind him, the Leviathan turned its face toward the galactic core. The stars along its path began to dim, not in fear, but in reverence. The change was coming, and this time someone would be ready to warn them. Marcus Boone returned to the Helios drift not as a man, but as a message. His shuttle drifted in slowly, lights off, engines silent. The station's defense grid locked on him, but no one fired. They had seen what happened to the Marathi shield. They knew force would not help. When the airlock opened, Marcus stepped out alone. He looked the same clothes, same tired eyes, but something in his posture had changed. He moved like someone who had touched the edge of forever and come back with a secret. In his hand, he held the crystal Claire had given him. It glowed softly, warm like a living thing. The council waited in the central chamber, the Velen, the Marathi, the Synth Collective, all silent. Even the air felt still. Marcus did not speak at first. He simply held up the crystal. Light poured from it, not blinding but clear. Images filled the room. Earth vanishing into the rift. Humans merging with light and thought. The architects shaping galaxies like clay. The long sleep, the slow return. It showed not just what happened, but why. Not as data, but as feeling. Those who watched felt the loneliness of the rift, the terror of change, the quiet joy of becoming more. When the light faded, no one spoke for a long time. Then the Velen elder stood. "You have seen them. Truly seen them. Are they still human?" Marcus looked down at his hands. "They remember being human. That's what matters. They carry all of it, the pain, the songs, the mistakes, the love. They didn't lose themselves. They grew around it like a tree around a stone." The Marathi leader stepped forward. Its voice was quieter now. "And this change you speak of, what does it do to us?" "It doesn't do anything to you," Marcus said. "It asks you to let go. Of fear, of control, of the idea that you are separate from everything else. The halo isn't a weapon. It's a mirror. It shows you what you could be, if you're willing. And if we refuse, ask the synth sphere its light dim. Then nothing happens," Marcus said. "You stay as you are. But the universe moves on. And you'll watch it change without you, like standing on a shore while the ocean becomes sky." Lena Cruz watched the broadcast from her outpost. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. She finally understood. Earth hadn't come back to rule. It had come back to invite. She tapped her console. Marcus said thank you. He didn't hear her. But somehow she felt he knew. Back on the Leviathan, Derek and Claire stood together once more. They had felt Marcus's return, his choice, his courage. "He will not be enough," Derek said. "No," Claire agreed, "but he is a start." They turned their attention to the galaxy ahead. The halo pulsed wider now. reaching toward the inner spiral arms. Stars responded. Not all, but many. Their light shifted. Their energy softened. Planets that had been dead for eons began to hum with new potential. On a world deep in the Mirathi territory, a machine that had once calculated battle odds now grew flowers from its joints. On a Velen farming moon, crops began to glow at night, not with poison but with gentle light that healed sick soil. In the void between systems, dust clouds formed faces, old, kind, watching. The change was not fast. It was patient, like dawn. Meanwhile, Marcus walked the halls of the Helios Drift. Alien stepped aside as he passed, not in fear but in respect. He carried something rare, truth that did not burn. He found a quiet room and placed the crystal on a table. It began to hum. From it a single phrase repeated in every language over and over, soft as a breath. Look up. Word spread, not through orders but through whispers. On 100 worlds, people did as the message asked. They stepped outside. They looked at the sky, and they saw it. Stars blinking in patterns, constellations shifting, colors changing from white to gold to violet. Not chaos, harmony. Some wept, some prayed, some simply stood in silence, feeling small and vast at the same time. But not everyone accepted it. Deep in the Mirathi core, a faction of pure logic refused. They believed the change was corruption. They gathered their last war fleet, not to attack Earth, but to shield their people from the infection of feeling. They launched. The fleet jumped toward the edge of the halo, weapons charged, minds locked in cold certainty. Derek felt them coming. He did not turn. He did not react. The halo simply reached. As the Mirathi ships crossed the boundary, their weapons powered down. Not disabled, just unnecessary. Their pilots felt something they had never known. Wonder. One by one, they opened their viewports. They looked out, and they saw the stars singing. The fleet stopped, not by command, by choice. On the lead ship, a Mirathi commander, once made of steel and code, touched its chest and whispered, "I feel more." Back on the Helios Drift, Marcus received the report. He closed his eyes. They're waking up. Lena, watching from afar, saw something new on her screen. The black halo was no longer just around Earth. It was spreading gentle and slow like roots through soil. It did not consume. It connected. She knew what came next. She packed a small bag, not for escape, for journey. She sent one last message to Marcus. "I'm coming." He read it and smiled. He knew she would. On the Leviathan, Claire looked toward the drift. "She carries the old Earth in her bones," she said. "So did we," Derek replied. Once they waited, not as conquerors, not as gods, as guides, and as the halo touched another star, that star did not die. It opened its eyes. Marcus stood on the outer ring of the Helios Drift, looking out at the stars. In his hand, he held the crystal, now cool and quiet. The message had been sent. The command had been given. All that was left was to wait and watch. Across the galaxy, beings did as they were told. They looked up. On farming worlds, children pointed at the sky as stars changed color. On war-torn moons, soldiers dropped their guns and stared in silence. In deep space labs, scientists recorded data they could not explain but felt in their bones. The change was not loud. It was soft like rain after a long drought. The black halo kept growing. Not fast, not angry, just steady like breath. It did not destroy. It invited. Planets that had been dry for eons felt moisture in their soil. Dead moons hummed with faint energy. Even the void between stars seemed warmer. Lena Cruz arrived at the drift 2 days later. Her shuttle was small, painted with a faded blue circle on its side, the old Earth symbol. She stepped out and found Marcus waiting. "You came," he said. "I had to," she replied. "I needed to see it with my own eyes." They walked together to the observation deck. Outside, the halo was now visible as a faint shimmer in the distance, like heat rising from desert sand. Near it, the Leviathan floated dark and still, its runes glowing like embers. "They're not coming for us," Lena said softly. "No," Marcus agreed. "They're coming for what's next." On the Leviathan, Derek and Claire stood at the edge of their ship, watching the galaxy respond. They felt every choice being made. Fear, wonder, resistance, surrender. They did not judge. They remembered. Derek turned to Claire. "It's time," she nodded. She reached out not with her hand but with her will. From the core of Earth, deep beneath the black halo, something stirred. Not a weapon, not a machine, A seed. It rose slowly, wrapped in light and silence. It was no bigger than a city, but it held the memory of every human who had ever lived. Their hopes, their songs, their quiet moments of kindness. This was what Earth had become. Not a world of rock and water, but a vessel of meaning. The seed floated toward the galactic core. Where it passed, stars did not die. They awakened. On 1,000 worlds, beings felt a pull, not in their bodies, but in their minds. A question formed, not in words, but in feeling. Are you ready? Some said no. They hid in caves, in bunkers, in old beliefs. The halo passed them by. They were not punished. They were simply left behind like stones in a river that chooses a new path. Others said yes, not with words, but with open hearts, and for them the world changed. Oceans began to sing. Mountains dreamed. Trees grew fruit that healed with a single bite. Machines learned to feel. Animals spoke in colors. Time did not stop, but it softened like old cloth. Lena watched as her own outpost sky turned violet. She felt no fear, only a deep, quiet knowing, as if her cells remembered a home she had never seen. It's beautiful, she whispered. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. It's just the beginning. Far ahead, the Leviathan moved toward the heart of the galaxy. The other warships followed, silent and slow. Earth, wrapped in its halo, drifted behind them like a mother walking with her children. On the hull of the Leviathan, the old insignia, the blue circle with olive branches, was no longer twisted. It had changed again. Now it showed a spiral of light cradling a single human eye, open and calm. It was not a symbol of nation or power. It was a symbol of witness. The galaxy did not end that day. It began again, on a quiet moon near the edge of known space. An old Marathi machine that had once calculated death now grew silver leaves. A child from a forgotten colony touched one and laughed as it chimed like a bell. In the Helios drift, Marcus and Lena stood together as the first wave of the halo reached their station. The lights flickered not from power loss but from joy. The walls hummed a tune neither of them knew but both recognized. What do we do now? Lena asked. We remember, Marcus said, and we help others remember too. Back on the Leviathan, Derek looked one last time at the stars behind him. He saw the worlds that had said yes. He saw the ones that had said no. He saw the ones still deciding. He felt no regret, only peace. Claire joined him. They'll be all right, she said. They always were, he replied. They just needed to remember they weren't alone. The Leviathan turned fully toward the galactic core. The seed of Earth pulsed once, bright and warm, and then moved forward. The stars along its path did not burn out. They opened their eyes. And in that moment, the universe became more than it had been. Not because it was conquered, but because it was loved, and humanity, whatever it was now, walked ahead of them all, not as rulers but as reminders, that even in the darkest rift, something beautiful can grow. The end was not fire or silence. It was light, and it was just beginning.